Hello everyone and welcome back to Versus, the show that today will take a gigantic bear and a man bird and make them duke it out for your amusement. Okay, well kinda. See, we don't have the means to get a real bear into this studio, and I'm pretty sure legal would have a conniption if I suddenly went all Ace Ventura and started inviting exotic wild animals onto the set. But now the good news, there's a movie called Birdman and it's really good. And there's a movie by that same director called The Revenant, which does feature a big ass bear. So why not just have 2015's The Revenant take on its big bro, 2014's Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance, that is the full title of the film. I gave it to you here, that fulfills my contract. Heretofore, I'll just be calling it Birdman or Birdman UVI.
It's too much. It's a little bit too much, I can tell.
They're both astonishing works of art that excel at transporting us to locations as varied as New York's modern theater district or the great Canadian wilderness in the early part of the 1800s. And their connective tissue is the genius behind the camera, Alejandro González Iñárritu, who somehow pulled off directing both films and releasing them in back-to-back years, which is the sports equivalent of coaching two different teams to consecutive Super Bowl championships. Actually, it's like you won the Super Bowl one year, then the World Series the next.
Thank you.
These two films couldn't be further apart on the surface, but today we'll take a deep look and investigate what similarities they may have, and ultimately, one movie will emerge as the champion, adding another coveted win to an already impressive award season haul. In one corner, we have Birdman, the story of a former superhero caliber actor hoping to reinvigorate his career with a Broadway comeback. In the other corner, it's The Revenant, a harrowing flick that centers on one man hell-bent on icy cold revenge way back in 1823. I really don't want to get on the wrong side of either set of characters, so this is set to be a Versus all-timer, and it's up to me, Mark Ellis, to make the final call. To quote Scar from The Lion King, oh goody.
You are such a naughty boy.
Here's how we'll determine a winner. Round 1, box office. Round 2, Tomatometer / audience score. Round 3, characters. Round 4, iconic moments. And then we'll do a wildcard round that could include anything from cinematography to set design to hurdles overcome during the shoot. Both productions have stories to tell. Fun fact, recently on Versus, we did a celebration of Alejandro González Iñárritu and Alfonso Cuarón. We celebrate folks on this show by making them compete against each other. It was the director of Children of Men and Gravity against the Birdman and Revenant guy. Who won? I can't tell you. You gotta watch the episode. I'm a vault of secrets, a steel trap of information, and I never give away classified level 5 clear. I can't remember. I'll be perfectly honest.
You don't put me on the spot, man.
But it's all for fun and games, and we all take a journey back to, what do we call these, the 20-teens? We were so young. All right, bird folk ready? Wilderness travelers bundled up? This is gonna be fun. Let's get it on. Round 1, box office. Before we spill the beans and reveal how many Pintos were counted for each flick's theatrical run, can we just take a moment to appreciate that these two movies both turned huge profits despite the fact that they weren't superhero blockbusters or summertime comedic romps or spooky season horror reboots. Just good old well-made original cinema, although Birdman can technically be labeled a superhero movie or an extremely dark comedy, and The Revenant was based on a novel, and Hugh Glass, the lead character, was an actual person. Look, they're both great movies, and people showed up to witness them in droves. So let's start with you, Mr. Glass.
No.
No, not you, Samuel. You just restin'. Try not to make any trains go crazy. Hugh Glass in The Revenant is played by Growing Pains alum Leonardo DiCaprio, who happens to nowadays be a pretty gigantic star in Hollywood. Anytime he shows up in a project, you know he's giving his all, and the good folks of Earth showed up to bear witness. You get it? I said bear. The Revenant is not Leo's highest grossing film ever, but that's mainly because he was in that boat movie whose name escapes me, but I think he got cold at the end of that one too. Was there room on the raft? It's a debate for another day. Jack. Titanic would haul in over $2 billion in 1997, and any movie not named Avatar or The Avengers ain't getting close to that. But it also proves his star power even at that tender young age. The Revenant is currently his third highest grosser ever at $532 million across the globe. It only trails Titanic and Inception. Hey, that Inception movie, that had a pretty good cast, right? Including Tom Hardy, who is the antagonist in The Revenant, and there is a method to my madness.
He's good at what he does, right?
Oh, he's the best.
Just for funsies, Leonardo D has 5 more movies that have all taken in at least $300 million in global bullion. Can you name them?
Yes.
In descending order, Django Unchained, The Wolf of Wall Street, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Catch Me If You Can, and The Great Gatsby. If you were yelling Shutter Island at your streaming device, you got oh so close.
You don't know me.
Oh, but I do.
You don't
Oh, I know you.
$299 million for that one. Okay, so we got a $500 million burger for The Revenant. Is there any way Birdman can compete? Kinda. And Michael Keaton, the star of said Avian Boy picture, remains competitive with DiCaprio, thanks in large part due to his superhero prowess and his animated work. Batman and Batman Returns team up for almost $700 million, and Toy Story 3 and Minions have each taken in over $1 billion. Plus, that Spider-Man fella tends to put butts in seats, and Homecoming grossed almost $900 million.
Hot dog.
But Birdman couldn't quite fly that high. It landed at a cool $102 million globally, which doesn't sound like it has any chance of matching wits with The Revenant, but let's take a look at profitability, shall we? Birdman's budget is estimated to be around $20 million. That's a lot to you and me. As a matter of fact, I'd be happy to split that with you. I'll even foot the tax bill. But to Tinseltown, that's a drop in the bucket. And now we know it was a wise bucket drop because the film made 5 times that in theaters. The Revenant cost a little more to lumber onto the big screen, to the tune of $135 million bones. And that's without any fancy lighting equipment. I'd put money on the fact that the lights in this studio are probably more than Inarritu used for his movie, meaning I'm better lit than Leonardo DiCaprio. Like him, I also drive a Ford Fusion. It's a lease. Okay, so one movie was super expensive to make, and the other a relative shoestring budget, and both turned out super positive margins, elating studio boardrooms. And for more giggles, these two films represent the top 3 of Alejandro's filmography in terms of money made. The meat in that sandwich in between The Revenant and Birdman is Babel, which took in $132 million back in 2006. So when we factor in all of these elements, the sheer number that is $500 million, it's just too much to ignore. Again, this film is Leonardo DiCaprio's 3rd highest grosser, and if Michael Keaton was in this movie, it would have been his 4th highest moneymaker ever. The greater accomplishment may have been turning $20 million into what we see with Birdman, but this round is about what you did at the theaters, and I chomped the most popcorn to The Revenant. The dude's on screen eating raw liver, and I'm portly and happy buttering up my corn. To each their own. And to The Revenant goes the first battle of the day. Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu goes up 1-0 over himself. 2015 won, 2014 zip.
You are lame.
Round 2, Tomatometer / audience score. Now we start getting into the good stuff. Investing in a project and reaping boffo box office as a result is wonderful. But when you're a director, the caliber of an Inarritu, you're looking to create cinema on the highest level. As in critically lauded, audience-adored, award-winning movies. Both of the flicks in contention today, I feel bad calling them flicks.
The theater, sweetheart. Don't be so self-conscious.
The motion pictures in this contest were both pegged as prime Oscar contenders before they were even released, and with good reason. Inarritu had already built up an impressive track record thanks to prior features like Amores Perros and Babel, which took home the Cannes Film Festival's top prize for a director. So we knew we'd be in for good stuff. But how did those critics and audiences feel walking out of the theaters? Let's eat our veggies first and head over to the Tomatometer. Birdman soared in 2014 on the strength of a nest chock full of positive reviews. 91% is where it gracefully landed in the tomato patch, with a critics' consensus that says, a thrilling leap forward for director Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu, Birdman is an ambitious technical showcase powered by a layered story and outstanding performances from Michael Keaton and Edward Norton. For more fun performer career comparing, let's look at another Birdman star's filmography and see how it shakes out. Emma Stone, step right up.
Dude, seriously?
That 91% is good for her second best Tomatometer report card ever, trailing only The Favorite and its 93% numeral. Birdman is tied for the Stone Silver Medal with La La Land and tops Zombieland's very deserved 89%. If you're still keeping score at home, Birdman's 91% is good for 3rd place on Edward Norton's career movie resume, which is topped by Moonrise Kingdom's 93%. And apparently that Michael Keaton guy can really make an impression.
I'm Batman.
His best effort here is Toy Story 3's 98%, followed by Spotlight's 97%. Okay, so Spotlight is the 2015 film that beat out The Revenant for Best Picture, while Inarritu defeated Spotlight's Tom McCarthy in the Best Director category. The connecting of dots between these movies is infinite. And now we look at The Revenant, which was highly anticipated given the star power on and behind the camera, and when it hit it landed fresh with a 78%. That's good. That's very good. It just ain't Birdman. So B-Dog is set to win his first point of the afternoon unless The Revenant can astonish us with its verified audience score. But before we get there, allow me to build some suspense by comparing The Revenant's 78% with star Tom Hardy's distinguished ography.
Yeah.
Tommy's been doing work, y'all. Dude's got 3 movies in the 90s, including Locke, Dunkirk, and Mad Max Fury Road. They're all great movies. Did you see Locke? It's just him on the phone in a car for 90 minutes, and it's riveting. I could watch that dude text in an airport for an hour and a half. The Revenant barely crawls into Hardy's top 10, landing at the number 9 spot. And it's number 11 on DiCaprio's Tomatometer history, which is topped by Catch Me If You Can's 96%. Okay, so Birdman is impressing Ozzy Osbourne by flying high again, but will The Revenant bark at the moon with the audience? Quite simply, yes. It improves on its critical number by jumping to 84%. How about that bird fella? It tumbles down to an earthbound 78% with you, the good moviegoers of Earth. I would hesitate to say either one is really a crowd pleaser, but they're both such stunning filmmaking achievements that what are we gonna do, make these rotten?
This is the kind of review that turns people into living legends.
For Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu himself, Birdman ranks as his second best effort in terms of Tomatometer. Amores Perros, which translates to loves a bitch. That sounds much more romantic in Spanish, doesn't it? It's tops at 93%. So looking at all these ooey gooey stats, both films impressed me with their critical and audience-derived percentages, but Birdman cracking the 90s is more of an accomplishment for me than The Revenant sneaking up the charts with its audience score. The unexpected virtue of ignorance, a concept of which your host is very familiar, gets the round 2 win, and we got us a tied ball game, 1-1. Round 3, characters. And now we arrive at the most interesting round of today's episode of Versus so far, because this one will highlight the people that star, co-star, show up, cameo, all the people in the movie, and how compelling of a characterization they provided. In short, did we care about y'all?
Absolutely.
This is particularly fascinating for the Birdman movie and The Revenant, 2 films that were heavy on A-listers, but the style of filmmaking from Inarritu might have cast a shadow over those performances. So get the blacklight. We're launching into this round like when a news outlet investigates a hotel room to see how dirty they really are. You ever see that? If you're a frequent traveler like me, don't. Just make sure next time you go into a hotel room, you're wearing gloves before handling the TV remote.
Is it true?
The Revenant had a Tinseltown Titan matchup between Leo and Tom, Hardy v. DiCaprio in the 1800s. Who would triumph? Who could conquer the elements? Who might win an award? For Leo's portrayal of Hugh Glass, the prep is as compelling as the performance. This dude basically did a whole season's worth of Fear Factor challenges to get into the vibe of Hugh Glass, a guide for trappers making their way through the Dakotas. After an attack by the Arikara tribe, whose chief was seeking his own kidnapped daughter, Glass is all but left for dead by Tom Hardy's John Fitzgerald. But not before John kills Hawk, the half-Pawnee son of Glass, in front of the helpless father. Glass undergoes a visceral and brutal healing process, then dumps himself into whitewater rivers to escape more attacks and propel himself towards revenge. DiCaprio went to great lengths in hopes of authenticating this role, with reports that he even ate raw animal liver to simulate the diet of the time, and I believe that still falls within the Atkins protocols. Playing Glass on any given day would require intense action sequences, or intimate combat scenarios, or just walking up a hill in freezing temperatures like all our parents had to do going to school. None of it sounds fun, but it ends up packing a wallop and giving us a remarkable confrontation between 2 actors at the top of their game.
I could muzzle you if you like. Take away the suffering real quick and easy. One never has to know that you give up. I do that.
And while Donald Gleason, Will Poulter, and Forrest Goodluck help round out the impressive cast, Birdman is the more established ensemble piece, led by Michael Keaton as Regan Thompson in a role that he may not have been born to play, but was inadvertently trained for in the decades prior. You see, Thompson is a former big shot actor who played the iconic Birdman on the big screen from 1989 to 1982. That sound like anyone you know?
Hi. Bruce Wayne.
Keaton himself was Batman in 2 films, the first in '89 and The Return in '92. But separating reality from fiction, Thompson has a nagging inner monologue as Birdman.
Smells like balls.
Even as the actor himself tries to revive his fame by pulling off a Broadway production of the play, What We Talk About When We Talk About Love. According to Keaton, you would have to go from funny to disturbing to deeply sad back to darkly funny, all within the span of one scene. The entire movie plays out like one long, continuous shot, so there is very little margin of error for the performers, who also list Emma Stone, Zach Galifianakis, and Edward Norton among their ranks. Stone is a recovering addict and Regan's daughter, whom he hopes to reconnect with, enlisting her as his assistant. Norton steps in to replace another thespian injured when a lighting rig fell on them, and he happens to be dating Naomi Watts' Leslie, also starring in the production. Andrea Riseborough and Galifianakis respectively shine as Regan's girlfriend and lawyer, and the always great Amy Ryan is again note perfect as Regan's ex-wife Sylvia. Maybe a little more name recognition for Birdman over The Revenant, but you will not find a bad performance in either movie. You'd also be hard-pressed to find actors who weren't pushed to the very limits of their craft by inhabiting these roles. The Revenant often featured brutal conditions that made getting even a simple take extremely arduous, and Inarritu's insistence at using almost all natural lighting meant that every action call had to count or else the day would be lost. I dare say that the budget for that historical epic wasn't originally proposed to be over $100 million, but delays and crew members leaving the project and alternate shooting sites a continent away really add up. But the final product gave us a host of unforgettable performances. However, in this case, Birdman arriving a year before helps its cause. Sure, the stars may have been more comfy and the shooting conditions probably involved more mercury in the thermometer, so the difficulty was instead nailing the long takes on a limited schedule. And I do mean long takes.
Shut up! Shut up!
To Keaton's previous quote, you would have actors doing up to 10 minutes at a time, and any little hiccup would ruin the take. You flub a line, a boom mic drops, that craft services beefaroni kicks in at the wrong time, you gotta go back to scratch. It's kind of like being on one of those baking shows that everyone loves watching. If the cake doesn't come out immaculate, it gets tossed in your face, and you gotta start all over. Both Keaton and DiCaprio were nominated for their lead performances at the Oscars, with Leo winning his year. Tom Hardy and Edward Norton were also up for the supporting category, and Emma Stone earned a supporting nod as well. But from top to bottom, the cast in Birdman had the bigger challenge because of how codependent they had to be on each other to get a scene in the can. I'd much rather have existed with the pressure on that set than survive the elements and intense battle sequences in The Revenant, but for all the memorable roles that we do get in Birdman, I'm giving that the win in round 3, which more than makes up for those runner-up ribbons at the Academy Awards, right? Can we just mail the cast a prize, like a trophy? Do we have trophies? People have heard of this show. Word's getting around. And Birdman is now up 2-1.
Yeah.
Round 4, iconic moments. So those performances were great, right? Two top-notch casts coming together to make something cool, but if we're going to see a movie about a guy whose alter ego is Birdman, we're gonna expect some pretty memorable sequences, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm paying to see a film that's about revenge in the freezing wilderness, I wanna feel like I'm there. Except the freezing and the wilderness part. I wanna get invested. And that's what this round is about. Which film, Birdman or The Revenant, provided us with the most thrills, chills, and spills? Should we allow chills? It feels like The Revenant is gonna have the upper hand there. But to be fair to Bird Guy, there's a ton of action in here, and, well, that's kind of the point of the movie. If you forgive me for sounding like the back of a VHS jacket, Birdman is one long kinetic tour de force that never lets up. That's the gag. It's all one scene, even as we veer from locations like a theater rehearsal to the streets of New York to a hospital room and beyond. Hospitals would have been really handy in 1823. No such luck for Hugh Glass, but somehow he was able to stack his opus with iconic scenes as well. Let's start off with a moment that's going to make all of our Chicago pals very happy. Da Bears. Although Hugh wouldn't be quite so jolly about this particular grizzly bear, one who is much more ferocious than this year's version in the NFL. Glass gets mauled by a gigantic Sid Luckman and is left for dead by other trappers. Not only does the rare usage of industrial light and magic's wizardry in this movie make for a harrowing showdown, it also sets up our chain of events that will follow. Tom Hardy, as most of us would, assumes it's only a matter of time before Leo succumbs to either his wounds or the elements or another human or animal fracas. Fun fact. So you guys remember that really old movie, The Empire Strikes Back?
You know that part? Where they're on the snow planet? With the walking thingy?
Hugh Glass recreates that later in the film as he's looking for any warmth in a storm. And according to legend, DiCaprio actually got snuggled inside a real animal carcass. In the film, it's a horse, but speculation has been that the actual stand-in deceased creature could have been a horse or a bear or even a tauntaun.
I thought they smelled bad on the outside.
I technically don't know what came first. Empire was released in 1980, meaning it's not that old, Peter Parker, but The Revenant takes place in the early 1800s. So did that happen before or after the rebels went to Hoth a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away? Either way, The Revenant is the closest thing that Gen Z has to the hit 90s show When Animals Attack. But man versus nature is just part of this journey. The Arikara attack is brutal and does not hold back. It's amazingly well shot given the chaos of what's happening. Inarritu and his team do a marvelous job of placing us in the center of the camp, and we're just closing our eyes hoping we make it out alive. Okay, so maybe Birdman never reaches that level of violence, but the inner turmoil felt by Rigg and Thompson is very real. Birdman might be real too. Keaton strolling around New York, whether fully clothed or down to his skivvies, is always compelling, and when the Bird Boys kicks in, the emotion ratchets up.
Birdman, the phoenix rises.
Riggin is clearly haunted by this thing, but it's so confident in its intonation when convincing Thompson that he is Birdman and that the laws of gravity don't apply to him. Similarly, a walk around the block with Edward Norton can quickly escalate to an argumentative confrontation, and the two A-listers going tete-a-tete packs an emotional wallop. It's also really fun to watch Riggin deal with the press and critics. In a bar, he has it out with a prominent theater reviewer, and then the foreign press comes into his dressing room. Both instances, as well as pop-ins from his lawyer, ex, and daughter, are wonderful examples of the energy this flick moves with. It's a motion picture, in the most literal sense of the term. Constant moving, goings-on, and it's always building momentum towards an epic climax and a curious denouement. We know where the Revenant's heading, and it's a final confrontation and a bid for revenge on the part of Glass, and just like the rest of the film, it sprawls out in such a way that we feel like we're part of the action. Birdman closes with an exquisite and violent curtain call, then daughter Emma Stone simply looks out a window and smiles, giving us a hint as to what the hell is going on out there. And while Birdman is seemingly one continuous shot, The Revenant gets bonus points for staging such stunning sequences in real environments with limited lighting but phenomenal talents in front of and behind the lens. If we're just looking at the most iconic scenes that made a film truly unforgettable, The Revenant sneaks past Birdman in my book. But I can barely read, so take it with a grain of salt. I'm good at math though, and now we're all tied up 2-2.
What the hell did you do that for? I like that poster.
And now it's time for the wild card round, Legacy. Ooh, it all comes down to this, the enduring emotions that we associate with two of the most singularly unique movies of the 2010s.
They're waiting for something huge. We'll give it to them.
But before we break down anything else associated with these two films, it's past time to celebrate one of the geniuses behind them both, cinematographer Emanuel Lubezki. He's one of a kind, yet twice in a row, he pulled off a breathtaking final piece of art and took home the top prize at the Academy Awards in back-to-back years for Birdman and The Revenant. That's ability right there. It's got to be enough on a resume to be able to mimic a continuous shot or frame up scenes in the freezing cold elements with only a few hours of natural light each day. Lubezki pulls off both feats like he's been doing this since birth. Oh, and he also won the same highest honor Oscar has for cinematographers the year before Birdman for Alfonso Cuarón's Gravity. 3 times in a row. That's even better than Tom Hanks in the 90s. Hey! And while we're on the topic of awards, both films were much more universally lauded than Rigg and Thompson felt when he had to deal with critics. Birdman was nominated by the Academy for 9 awards, taking home 4, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Original Screenplay to go along with the Best Cinematographer. Meanwhile, The Revenant was up for a total of 12 awards, winning 3, for Best Actor Leo, Best Director Alejandro, and in what must have started to become a nuisance in the schedule of Emanuel Lubezki, Best Cinematography. It makes this call so tough between two very different films that somehow were guided by the same hand. The movie was also an original screenplay, co-written by Inarritu, and that might be one of the separating factors here. The story of Hugh Glass, based on the real guy, had been told before, but never in a visual medium, and no one could have envisioned the impact it would have. But Birdman and its originality, its relatability to Michael Keaton's own career, and the chances it takes in storytelling is too much to overcome at the end of the day. Birdman takes the point, and thus wins the match in a nail-biter. All right, so we know that Leo DiCaprio got his start on Growing Pains. Michael Keaton also kicked around Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood for a brief time. They're both amazing talents, and they're both in phenomenal films that we got to celebrate today, courtesy of their director, Alejandro González Iñárritu. That's all just my take, of course. Now let me have it with yours. On social media, I'm at Mark Ellis Live. Make sure you're following us here at Rotten Tomatoes, or head over to RottenTomatoes.com for all the latest in the world of TV, movies, freezing cold epics, bird-related pictures, and everything else in between. Thanks for watching. I'm Mark Ellis. We'll see you soon on Versus, and I am gonna go get warm somewhere.